Okay, so am I in the picture now?
As the weaning begins. Yes.
Welcome to our Quincy Real Estate Happy Hour podcast. I'm Dustin Vance, Kathy Anderson, Sandy Freeman. Today we're going to go through the buying process, kind of give an outline what that looks like.
Things we're going to touch on.
We're going to touch on the process, starting out to finishing up at the closing table. For me, the very first thing a potential buyer should be doing is looking for agents. Kathy, how would a potential buyer go find a buyer's agent?
A lot of buyers know realtors already. You could talk to those agents. You could talk to your friends, family, look online. I strongly suggest looking at reviews, references, doing a little research.
Yeah, Google's a great resource for that. Mm-hmm. Most realtors I know have Google business profiles. There's reviews out there you can go read. Mm-hmm. So it's not a bad place to start. And then you find somebody that you think you want to work with, just getting on the phone with them, finding out
Mm-hmm.
a little about them. What would be a good quality you'd find somebody to buy an agent, Sandy?
Someone that's knowledgeable, and you can pretty well get an idea once you first talk with them. Mm-hmm. Just how long they've been in the business, experiences that they've had. Ask them about the area, see what they know about the area, pricing, etc.
Is there one characteristic you would think would make a great buying agent?
Honesty, if you can see that right away, sometimes you can't.
Sure.
So that's why you really need to talk to your agent.
Yeah.
So you can sort of get to know them, see if you click.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Do you think somebody that's on social media is important?
Definitely, absolutely.
Yeah, social media
yes.
presence?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I also think make sure it's someone who's going to communicate, respond to your text, phone calls, questions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Be responsive.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. So today we're going to try the Elijah Craig Small Batch 1789. Okay.
Oh, listen to that.
Right. You're trying. It's just
Double fisted here. Okay.
There you go.
Holy moly.
It didn't smell terrible.
It doesn't smell terrible.
It smells okay.
Smooth. No, it's good.
Yeah.
It's just that my throat is dry, and it's hitting it.
My question was how that was going to taste after the Dead Pepper Buck.
Actually, it just overpowers it.
Yeah, it did probably take out anything that you were drinking before.
Yeah, it's just my throat is so dry that it's...
I like it. I mean,
Yeah, it's good.
it's a $40 bottle. It wasn't very expensive, so it's.
Would you mix that with something?
I you can. I think typically, if I mix anything, it's either a little water or some ice or something.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if that would be great. I think it would ruin the flavor if you put anything with it other than water.
I think
Yeah.
if you do something like an old fashioned with it,
Yeah, something like that.
yeah, that would be fine. Just doing Stat and Coke or something like that, I don't think it would have the same.
Yeah.
No. A high school drink.
You don't hate it, do you?
I don't hate it. I was the first one to go in for a second drink, so.
Yeah. I don't hate it. It ain't one of my favorites. But
Right.
It's flavorful. Any comments?
No, delicious.
So after you kind of get an idea of an agent you want to work with, if you haven't done this already, the next step in my mind is getting pre-approved. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make a lot of sense to go look at houses before you actually know what your budget is and what you can go and get. You might be able to figure it out through an online calculator, but that doesn't necessarily mean what a bank will lend you. So it's really important to have a pre-approval to start looking.
Right.
I also feel like most realtors would be hesitant to submit an offer without a pre-approval.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Definitely. want to have that in hand when
Yeah, I mean, that's
submit
usually,
an offer.
if you forget to submit the pre-approval with the offer, that's usually the first question from the listing agent is, are they pre-approved?
Right.
Right.
You know, multiple offer situations, they don't even, those are almost all automatically pushed to the bottom, obviously, because they're not real solid offers without that pre-approval.
Right.
What would be a good way of finding a lender?
Well, I think a good agent probably would have lenders that they could suggest.
Yeah.
I think we like our local lenders, certainly.
Yeah.
I think there are some good online. The problem with that, going online to look, is you don't know which are the good ones unless you've used them before and or have talked to someone that has used them. So, sometimes it's good to start local and go from there.
Yeah, and all lenders are the same, right?
Well, and I think local lenders will offer the various products too. Not every lender, every product, but the different mortgage types and loan products.
Right.
I think many local lenders have online applications. You can kind of start there and then get connected with the loan officer.
Is it a good idea to get pre-approved maybe from a couple different lenders?
Well, I would say just like shopping around for realtors, it's good to shop around until you find the realtor, but to use several realtors, have them take you out to find the one that you want isn't a good idea.
I was just meaning you can have 2 pre-approvals, right? And they can give you their disclosures as far as what the lending fees are, what interest rate they think they can get you.
Without going through the actual process.
Without doing the actual, make the
certainly
offer.
interview.
But with that, you'd be able to pick which lender you think would work best for you, which offers the right products, and you can move forward with that because they're not all the same. They don't all offer the same programs and products. So it's good to kind of branch out
and see what the loan company is going to do for you, because some will not work with grants because there's more paperwork involved, and so there's products out there that they tend to lean to.
Picking a lender is kind of also like picking a realtor, and the fact that you do want to have a conversation, you want to feel comfortable with them, feel like they can handle situations when they arise, because they will arise.
Right.
Every time they will be there, things will come up. So it's good to have a lender that knows how to handle that.
Right. And even if you've bought a house several times, things change so quickly over time that you don't always have everything correct, and that's why you use your loan company or your bank. They'll keep you up to date on how to maneuver through the process and what's the latest and the greatest and so on.
Yeah, there's a pretty significant change coming, right, for realtors and the buyer's representation and how that looks today versus what it looked like previous. The way things are being presented to sellers and buyers is going to change. They're typically, sellers used to pay the buying side commission. They always had the option not to. It's going to be more prevalent that they don't have to do that, or that's an option for them, and some of them are going to take the option to not. So we, as agents, need to be proactive with the buyers and explaining what that looks like. And honestly, we don't even have a defined picture yet because things are still kind of being worked through. So we'll probably do another video later on that kind of summarizes what that landscape's going to kind of look like once we get a better handle on ourselves.
Correct.
The next step, we kind of planning out your wants, needs, get an idea after you get your pre-approval what kind of budget you're looking at. What are your thoughts on that, Sandy?
The budget, we were talking about planning.
Yes.
Planning for the buyers, what they should be planning for.
Maybe meet with their agent at the office and kind of go through the process and look at some listings online and kind of get a feel for what they like, don't like.
Yeah, and especially with these changes, it's going to be imperative that you start meeting buyers at the office. We have done traditionally many times just showing up at a property meeting the buyer there, and now with this new change, it's going to take a little bit more. We have to explain to the buyer and have them sign some documents before before we get started in showing property. So it's going to become more important than ever.
Right. So for the planning stage, it's basically just taking your pre-approval, deciding where you want to be at as far as budget-wise, what some of your desirables on the property. Do you need 3 bedrooms? Can you get by with 2? Do you need 2 bathrooms? Do you need a full finished basement? Do you need an unfinished basement? Do you need a basement at all? All these questions are going to be asked. We're going to try and dial it in.
Areas.
Right. Yep. Do you have a school district you want to be in?
And then the agent too can set up email notifications kind of based on the parameters that the buyer chooses to get notified of a new listing when it comes up. And obviously the agent is going to be keeping an eye out too and notifying the buyer, but it's just kind of another way of keeping the buyer updated.
Right.
And a lot of buyers are already sometimes constantly looking online anyway.
Yeah.
Correct.
And with that, I think it's more important that alert comes from the agent, not necessarily through a national site. They tend to be a little bit slower on updating some things. So you have to wait. That our MLS feed feeds those national sites, so they have to wait for us to input it anyway.
Right.
So it's a little more timely if it comes directly from our system versus waiting for one of the national guys to pick it up.
For sure.
Okay. After you got an idea what you're looking for, we're going to get down to the showings, right? We're going to start looking at homes.
Right. But a real good idea though is once the buyer, if they have a couple houses that they do want to look at, to drive by it,
That's true.
see the area, and see if it's something that they want to look at. We don't want to waste their time.
Sure.
Yeah, because
You know.
sometimes driving by can eliminate.
Right. And many people can't look at houses until after work.
Yeah.
And so you know their time, or on the weekend, their time is precious. So just drive by. That at least gives you an idea if that's something you want to have the agent take you in.
So as the agent, we can do the scheduling for that, right? Find a good time that works for everybody to get you in that property so you can see it.
And it's nice to have a little bit of notice to get the showing set up. And
Yeah, sometimes it does take a little bit of work, like we're back and forth between us and the listing agent, depending on the schedule of the seller.
And the occupancy factor.
And maybe it should be mentioned that definitely we can show any homes. Doesn't
Absolutely.
matter which brokerage company has it
No, it
listed.
doesn't
Right.
matter.
That's a question I get quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah,
And
right.
even for sale by owners.
Sure.
We can call that seller and set that up. And
Yep. You've seen some properties, you fell in love with the house, and you're going to put the offer in. Talk about that, Kathy.
My favorite part.
Yep. I knew it.
and offers.
Right, yes. Well, we can either meet in person. Sometimes if it's a first-time home buyer, I like to meet at the office if we can, if we've got the time and if it works out, and go through the offer in person. Otherwise, we've got electronic signature software that, we can just email the offer, go through it by phone, sign electronically. And generally, I like to have the offer, if I can, have it all typed up and ready, and, for the most part, have the information filled in, and then go through it with the buyer. Definitely explain everything, all the terms of the contract.
Because it is an actual contract. There are certain criteria that have to be met. So it's good to sit down and have that explained. Everybody gets on the same page.
And it's probably anywhere from 6, 7, 8 pages to 15.
Yep, depending on all the
depends.
addendums, and it can get pretty lengthy.
Can. And then disclosures be in there as well for them to review and sign and so on.
So, making offers, right? The buyer obviously gets to set what they're willing to offer. Can we help them come up with that number, Sandy?
We can show them comps to guide them, but it's really not up to us to tell them what they should offer. But what we do is give them information to make that decision. We do comps, so we do solds and actives. Solds represents the selling market. What's going on?
You said doo-doo.
And you made me laugh.
I was stoic.
When did
I left it go. We do. Yeah, we all do. Everybody please.
Crap.
I looked at Kathy. She's looking at me, and I just go.
I wasn't quite sure which part of that caused the issue. Was it the hair? Was it the face?
no.
Or was it the words?
It was doo.
No, I didn't even hear myself do it. So that's all cut out.
I like it.
Yeah, but then they ended up with
I don't know where you ended in that chain of thought.
pull comps. We pull solds and actives. Solds represents what the market actually reflects. Actives are what the sellers would love to get for their properties. So, but we have to have a balance of both. That really helps the buyer decide.
Another thing with those comps is if you're looking at a price range, how many active listings are in that price range?
Correct.
What's the other competition out there in that price range?
Correct.
Even the buyer's not interested in any of those homes, if there's not many in that price range, that means there should be potentially other buyers looking there too.
Right.
And if there's a lot there, maybe there's not a lot of competition, and you can adjust your offer that way.
Right. I think the conversation changes if it's a house that's been listed for 2 weeks or 1 day or
Correct.
So that's all part of the guidance that we try to give.
Right.
Yeah. So another step inside of the offers is earnest money. Mm-hmm. Who wants to talk about earnest money?
Kathy?
Oh, sure. So earnest money, a portion of the offer price, anywhere from 500, I think would be a minimum, up to pretty typically maybe 1,000, 1,500, couple thousand. But it's just a buyer's evidence that they've got skin in the game, that they've got sincerity towards the transaction, and only if the offer is accepted is the check delivered to either the title company or the listing brokerage, and then just held for the buyer's benefit until closing.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you're right about the price of the house being the determination for that. But another determination is if that property has some other offers on it, that's something that you may have to up to get the eye of the seller.
Right. For a strong offer.
Other than just price and earnest money, there's also inspections. And, you can do a whole gamut of inspections, home inspection, termite, if there's pools or spas, those can be inspected. Typically, we definitely recommend inspections, home inspection at a minimum. And it's not because we're buddies with the inspectors and get a kickback at the end. It gives the buyers a little peace of mind, especially first-time home buyers that's never been through this process before. Knowing that they have somebody who's trained and licensed to do this, can go through the home and give them an honest opinion of the property. And the opinion's not to be a pass-fail, yes or no. It is absolutely just here are some facts about your home. Here's some things I noticed. You may want to address now. You may want to address 5 years from now. But they're just a good way to start learning about that property.
So what happens at the end of the inspection period after the report has gone to the people? Do they go to
Well, it depends, right? It depends what the offer says. Because there's two ways you can handle inspections. You can either say, we're going to inspect, and based upon the inspection report, we can void the contract over certain criteria. Or we can turn around and ask the sellers for repairs. So you determine that in the beginning offer to the seller, which avenue you're going to take. If there's repairs being asked for, it's another document that gets filled out that you ask the sellers to say, hey, based upon the home inspection, here's some things that need to be remedied. And it can't be wear and tear items. It can't be things that are normally, these aren't new houses, most likely. Yep, there's some scuff paint, there's some cracked drywall here and there, but it's really mechanical, safety, electrical, structural, those type of big items that buyers can ask for repairs on, right? So then it goes to the seller, and the seller can decide what they want to do. They either can say, yeah, we'll repair it, no, we're not going to repair it, or in lieu of repairing, we will give you a credit of X amount of dollars.
So do you think it's a good thing for the buyer to ask money off the price of the house because They didn't like the way the inspection came back on the basement
And they can't.
foundation.
But they can't. Like that document protects the seller in that regard.
Because it's not appropriate under the addendum.
Right. And that's something that is a misconception with a lot of buyers. They get that report back and they think, well, it's really thick and there's a lot of things wrong. I'm going to turn around and just ask for money off. Can't do it.
And why would you think that is? I mean, when the seller prices that house, I mean, let's face it, there are sellers that overprice and there's no rationale to it. But the sellers that really think about what they want to sell it, they take that into consideration when they price it. So unless it's something they don't even know about, that price is already priced for those many of those issues.
Absolutely.
So to even think about asking for money off again, which they cannot do, but even the thought of it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it's a tough conversation to have with your buyers, and I personally like to have it as we're doing the offer.
Oh, definitely.
Right at that stage to let them know.
Yeah.
If
Set the expectations then.
Yes, if that inspection was back really, really, really horrible about all these little wear and tear items, we're not going back and asking for reduction of price.
Right.
We can't.
Yeah, yeah, it is easier to have them know that up front. It saves them a lot of time and trouble.
Yeah.
A lot of disappointment.
Well, and that's the other thing too. I think the misconception had been, well, we're going to offer more knowing we're doing an inspection and we're going to knock it down once the inspection comes back. So once we have this conversation, I'm like, no, that's not really how this works.
Right.
Well, I'd like to bring that offer back down to something they really want to offer. They feel is more fair. You make the offer that you feel comfortable with.
If a buyer or seller just can't come to an agreement over repairs, and it's all in writing, and it goes back and forth, and it has to, adhere to certain timelines, which we keep track of, and so that we're timely. And if they just can't resolve it, then the buyer could void the contract and have their earnest money returned.
Right.
Generally.
Right. Seller as well.
Another thing that kind of goes along with inspections is the appraisal. Most of the time it's required by the lender, not all the time. And then if we have an issue with the appraisal, either it comes in low, what happens then?
There's a form to submit a written request to the seller to lower the price, to agree with the appraisal price. The seller can either lower the price, refuse. The buyer and seller can meet in the middle. The buyer could come in with more funds because the lender's not going to loan on more than the appraised amount.
Right.
I have had very few appraisal issues over the years, but it does happen.
I've had a couple, but most of the time they're conversation, they get worked out.
Right.
I mean, really they are. I think when after you're at the appraisal part, everybody wants the deal to get done, and everybody's willing to be a little more
Depends on the situation.
flexible to figure it out.
Yes, I guess I've never had it not work out after an appraisal issue.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I can't say that it necessarily didn't work out, but I've had buyers pick up that extra, which is not advisable.
Right.
I do not advise that at all. There's a reason for the appraisal. Now, in this particular case, the people felt this was going to be their last house, and they didn't care. They loved the house. But there are times when that price or that house is overpriced, and that appraiser comes in for that buyer to go ahead and make up that difference. Can overprice that house for them if they want to turn around and sell it in a couple years. So you really have to balance that out. Most, I would say 99% of the time, it works out with buyers and sellers. And it is because they want to work it out. They want it to be successful.
And an appraisal is for the lender's benefit as well. The lender obviously doesn't want to loan on more than the house might appraise for.
Sure.
So
Correct.
With a cash transaction, it's an option to have an appraisal, but for the most part, if the buyer has cash and offers what she feels is fair for the home, then we could have an appraisal to back that up. But part of what an agent does too is advise the buyer that the price is reasonable.
Correct.
And appropriate.
By doing our due
According to
diligence.
just market stats, but the buyer obviously can have their own opinion.
Sure,
Correct.
and that's one part of the appraisal that we kind of do is we pull comps. We look at market stats and market data. So, using some of our data, they go a little bit further and they look at use and functionality and all that other stuff that kind of rolls into there. But okay, so let's say that we've gotten to this point, everybody's happy. Now we got to get to the closing. So what happens in that, Kathy?
So just a couple more steps after that. Transferring the utilities, which typically I give my buyer some instructions, or the seller, who to contact, who are the utility providers, and just transferring those into the buyer's name as of closing. And scheduling a final walkthrough just to go look through the house one more time, be sure everything's okay and everything that should be there is still there. I had a seller take a refrigerator once that they weren't supposed to, so you're also checking for that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Correct.
And then closing statement.
Closing statement, yep. Review that, make sure the funds look like what they're supposed to look like, credits are where the credits are,
Correct.
Figure out what the buyer has to bring to closing. Usually that's either a wire transfer or a cashier's check.
Right.
Correct.
No personal checks, no piles of cash.
Licenses, driver's license
are very
needed.
important for anybody that
Valid, yes.
Anybody that's signing, they need to have their valid driver's license. Or
Both parties.
federal ID, something, state ID, something,
And then the closing itself, usually about an hour or so at the title company or the bank.
Yep.
Depends on cash or loan. Obviously, loan papers, you have a lot more to sign.
And then keys.
Keys and questions, possibly, that buyers might have from the sellers, for the sellers, that the different parts of the house and how it runs. And
Right. It's usually a nice opportunity for the, at the end, for the buyers and sellers to meet and talk, answer questions.
right.
That wraps up our episode for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Hope to see you next time.
Alrighty.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. Maybe we ought to have outfits like we dress up or something.
See, repairs. I already talked about repairs.
I'm so bored with this. Oh my God. Put that on there.